Hi everyone, we're back, and a lot of you stopped at this stage, but for others who want to go on, consider this to be your underpainting, and it's kind of bright, and the reason why I made it bright was because this will give a glow underneath the next layer that we put on. A couple of things. I also said I wasn't sure if I liked this going straight across and just cutting it in half, and I don't. I've looked at it over the past couple of days, and I've decided that no, in fact, I do want to break that up. So we're going to do that today as well. These are the brushes that I'm using. They are Blick Master Stroke Red Sable, number 2, number 4, yeah, 2s and 4s. And this one is a number 2 round. This is a number 4 filbert. And this is a number 2 filbert. This is also another number 2 round. The number 2 rounds have a tendency to, their points kind of grind down a little bit. So I like to order them in excess. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is, I think what I want to do is I want to add in some more darks down here. Okay, because they do have a set of where they are, but at the same time, it's not enough. So I'm going to take the number 2 flat, and I'm just going to slowly put in some vertical strokes to try to make that grass seem a little bit taller in this middle ground here. I'm using Turpenoid as a medium, and like I've said in the past, I'm not using a whole lot of different oils and stuff because I know this is a pandemic quarantine kind of thing and supplies might be short. So I'm just using the Turpenoid to thin out my paint and to clean my brushes. Now, some of the areas of this dark are taller than others. But they all have this feathery kind of feel to it. And we'll put other stuff on top of that too, so it won't stick out so much, but just to kind of get more of a surface before we go across. Just kind of gesturing that in. Your scribble, don't lose your scribble. Some of these darks I did have in there before, but I kind of lost them in the paint. So I'm just putting them back. Now also in here, there is a grayish area here that I'm going to put in. And there's one down here too. It's really kind of low. If you look at your picture, you'll see it. So this gray is a green gray, so make a green, add some black and some white. Okay, trying to keep it simple. There are more complicated paints you can use to try to get this, but I'm trying to accommodate everybody. But if you have the theory of gray, if you understand how to make gray, you can use any colors that you want in that theory as long as they're complements. So green gray, you could just make a green with any blue and yellow, and take a red of any kind, put it with it, add white, and you will get a green gray. If you're doing it the simple way, you can make a black with dark blue, dark brown. add it to your green and add white. Don't forget your edges. And then there's a little thin one right here that sort of connects to this guy almost. It's a little more broken up. And it actually connects to this one, but it gets very close to that one. Kind of splits a little, I guess. Now, as I've said in the past, a lot of times when I'm doing grass, I'm doing a different kind of gesture to it, but the marsh grass is very different. It's very organized, and you have to kind of respect its organization by the majority of the strokes being straight up. You will add some going in the other direction, but start like this. Okay, now within here there's some reflected lights. Reflected lights are lights that are coming from, bouncing from another source. So for instance, the direct light is hitting something and then bouncing back. So right here in the view of where the cameraman was standing, maybe there was a building over here, you know, or maybe there was a tree or something. And so the light's hitting that and bouncing back and then creating a reflected light down here. And the reflected light down there is kind of a blue-green. And it's a blue-green that's almost a perfect blue-green. So in other words, it's not too blue, not too green. It's kind of right there in the middle. I like layering color on top of color. It gives you a different look. It's still direct paint, but at the same time, it's somewhere in between, you know, because you're preparing to put on another layer and you're keeping the underlayer at the same time, where pure direct paint is you're covering it every time completely and just kind of finding your way with it. I think the grass in the fall is so beautiful on the marshes. The color is so amazing. And if you've never noticed it, truly, take a moment and stop and look at it the next time it's fall and the grass has turned colors. There's also another layer that's right on top of that first layer that I just put in. Okay, so what I'm doing with these clumps here is I'm thinking more than one blade of grass, you know. It may look like one blade of grass, but until we put on that last final layer, you'll see that this is actually the groupings of grass. Okay, and I'm just going to break up the line just a little bit. No paint on the brush. Get rid of that white spot. Okay, now the next layer here is we need a kind of a burnt orange to go in there. Let's see if this color works. Burnt orange is made by making an orange and then adding a little tiny bit of blue to it. And I think it's too light. I need something a little darker. Just check this color. Perfect. Okay, so painting also is about understanding neutralization. So if I want a burnt orange, I'm going to take orange with a little blue in it. If I want, this one ended up being too light, so I needed it more red, so I added red, but then I had to add green because green is a complement to red. Okay, did that make sense? If something's too bright, add its complement. And I want to put a little bit more through here. See, I have a little bit of it there, but I don't have enough. So I'm just going to add a little more there. Okay, and then through here there's some more of the green, because later on I'm going to add some more of the light color. So the question is it this green or is it this green? I think it's more that green. So this is just slightly darker than the blue-green that you had, a little less blue in it. So green is made with blue and yellow. You could add some unbleached titanium, or you could add some titanium and then add a little tiny bit of brown to kind of get rid of that brightness of the white, or a tiny bit of red to gray it down. The same thing happens over here. And the whole time I'm doing this, I'm imagining myself traveling up this. I mean, certainly we can't walk on Marsh like this, but if you could, you know, there's a certain amount of distance, you know, that's in front of you and behind you, and you just imagine it in your head. Okay, now I'm going to add a little more dark through here because that comes up a little higher. And I'm doing this very dry, as you can tell. You can hear it, actually. Okay, now before I put on the last layer of grass on this area, I'm going to take all the paint off my brush. And I'm going to scribble it. I won't lose the vertical strokes, but what it will do is it will unify it together. Okay. Now I'm going to take the number 2 round red sable, and I'm going to put in where the sun is actually touching it, which means it's the highlights. And let's try this color first. Down here, is that the right color? Too light? I mean, too dark. So we're going to use a lot of mineral spirits on this, or terpenoid. I use mineral spirits and terpenoid interchangeable because for years we used mineral spirits. So I'm just so used to, after, 15 years of using mineral spirits, it's hard for me to switch the commentary. So I'm going to take some terpenoid with this very pale yellow. And this yellow was made with Naples yellow from Utrecht and a little bit of white. And you'll see the light is hitting areas, when you look at the original photo, the light is hitting areas that are not consistently across. I mean, they're across, but some are tall, some are short, and then some have these spikes. So you hit the spikes first. And then you just kind of bring them over. So the light's hitting there. There's a couple little pokes here. Okay, and as we get back, they get a little bit peachier as they get closer to the light and away from the green. And it's interesting because if you look at the original photo, it looks like they're definitely in, but they're kind of all over the place. So if you squint your eyes, squinting your eyes is actually really good to do, because when you squint your eyes, you lose a lot of the reflected lights, and it gets you right down to the brass tacks of the form. Find your areas that are most dominant, put those in first. And you don't have to put them everywhere. Remember what I said about the herringbone suit, you know? Here and there will read as if it's everywhere. And always think of the checkerboard. So I've got one here, I've got one there. That means I need to put one here. To visually bring the viewer's eye back. What a lot of people don't realize is, I think artists realize it, but people who are just starting out don't realize, is that an artist's job is to control the view of the viewer. So in other words, control their eyes to where to look first, where to look second, how to bring them around, help them travel. And the best way to do that are with a few steadfast old rules, tired and true. One of them is the checkerboard. Now, if you notice, that real orangey area now feels like it's glowing as opposed to just being there in your face, you know? All right, I'm going to put some in here. And it's good to go up over the dark because then that gives it a little more dramatic effect. A little too much paint there. Want some of this orange to show, so I'm going to jump down a little bit. And it's good to work from back to front because if I do all the strokes here and then I go to do that, it feels like this is sitting on top of that when actually that's sitting on top of that. You know, I always had this philosophy that I never wanted to produce a student who's just another version of myself. I've always wanted them to find their own voice, you know. And this is kind of going against that grain. So I'll be honest with you, I've had difficulty with finding a place for this, you know, because I don't mind teaching the foundations and telling you what those foundations are, but I don't want to produce, you know, people just doing what I do. I want you to do what you do. And so the best thing I can say to you is watching what I do will give you the foundations as far as light, drawing, color theory. But I really want you to experiment You know, experiment with your color. Experiment with your drawing. Experiment with your design. The only place where you can really kind of get in trouble is experimenting with your color. If you mix complements together too much, you'll get brown, you know, so keep that in mind. But it almost seems like a rite of passage, you know, making brown paintings. I mean, we've all done it. So if that's how it's working for you, well, you know, just join the club. It's kind of like falling off your bike the first time they take the training wheels off. So there's our really tall grass there. We're going to move on from that. Oh, actually, along here, there's some darks. So let's throw those in first. Now that our water is dry, we can do this with confidence that it's not going to interrupt our flow of our paint or change the color. I put in a light one first and then put a dark one on top to give it a little more depth. I want to break up that straight line. There are no straight lines in nature. And there's a few more over here that go up into this. The light's kind of hitting it, so it's a little lighter, a little orangier. So those are actually pretty tall in there. Okay. Now, in through here, there's some reflected lights that are warmer than this, yet cooler than that. So this color that I've been using along through here is yellow ochre with a little tiny bit of purple in it. Purple, of course, is the complement to yellow, and we'll tone it down. So the reason why I came to that notion of that's the color that I needed and how I needed to make it was, my first thought was it was a yellow. My second thought was, is it a bright yellow? No, it's a neutralized yellow. It's kind of a greenish yellow. Well, what better greenish yellow than yellow ochre? But it wasn't just yellow ochre. So then I had to ask myself, well, if it's yellow ochre but it's toned down, what do I need to tone it down with? Well, the answer is purple. And quite honestly, any purple will do. Of course, if you have a purple that has a little more blue in it, it'll turn the yellow ochre more green. If you have a purple that's a little more red in it, it'll turn the yellow ochre a little more orange. And in this particular case, I had one that was a little more red in it. Okay, now the next layer is here. And I'm going to start first with that color that we were just talking about, the yellow ochre with the purple. And I'm going to put in a layer in through here, and then I'm going to put the light on top of it. I normally paint on Masonite, and the paint doesn't get soaked up so much like it does with canvas. If you get a chance to paint on an ampersand panel, try it. Just don't use the bristle brushes with it. Definitely use red sables, because ampersand panels, here's actually sitting right here. Here's one. They're called gesso boards. I like the ones that have the texture to it. They are wood, and the paint will sit on the surface of it and not seep in, so you can manipulate it a lot more. Okay, now we're going to get a little bit lighter as we go back and a little bit less intense. First we're going to put this one in here, and this one is pretty intense. We haven't gotten less intense yet, but we have gotten lighter. Now you can't tell that that's lighter, but trust me, it's lighter than the color we've been using. That's the thing about, you know, color. It's only as light as what it's next to. If I had used, if I had used the same color, it would look different. So if I use this color up here, it would appear to be darker. So I had to lighten it up to go back here. And I kind of wanted it to feel lighter up through there, because this is still partly in shadow. And this is in direct light. Not indirect, but in the direct light. Now that may be a little too light. It's kind of pushing it this way, so I'm going to tone it down with a peachy color. This is a neutralized peach, and neutralized peach is made with red, yellow, and a little bit of blue. Just trying to gray that down just a little bit. Okay, there's a little bit down here. This one is a little more neutralized. Feathering it in. That's sticking out, gonna cover that. Now I need to bring some of this dark up into that so that's back on top again. Okay. Did I remember to put something in there? Oh, I forgot to put something in there. Let me put something in there. Okay, so now let's move up to this layer. And it's pretty much the same thing. It's just, this gets a little more peachy, pinkish, neutralized. Remember, as things move back in space, they get cooler and they get a little bluer. Now, this doesn't appear to be a blue, but it has more blue in it. Sorry if I keep hitting the camera. So it has more blue in it to neutralize it, and that's just enough blue to make it feel bluer. I mean, blue's a relative color. So I guess what I'm saying is you don't have to add blue visually, you just have to add it to your paint, and it'll cool it down to make it feel like it's moving back in space. These areas are pretty fluffy. And see how these are tall through here? They're not going to be as tall there. They will break it up because we want to break up that line, but they're not going to be like the huge tall ones. So instead what we're going to do is we're just going to do a couple of these little teeny little things just to break it up. Okay, and we need to add a transitional color between the dark and that. So let's do it with some of the gray-green that's maybe neutralized with a little bit of red. Still too dark. Add a little of that, and then I'm going to add a similar component that's more red, so that it's not just one, but it's both of them working together as far as the red and the green. And when you put complementary colors next to each other, as opposed to mixing them together, they will oppose each other in the viewer's eye. So in other words, they create almost a vibration. It's a wonderful little trick to know. A lot of these color theories, you know, it's hard to truly understand them until you've worked with them a lot. So in other words, seeing blue in a color is something that takes practice. You know, when I'm in my classes, the kids will often say, "Deborah, how do I make this color?" And I'll yell across the room, this, and this. And when the kids are older, they're like, "How do you do that?" And it's like, oh, years of looking, and you'll be able to do it too someday. Okay, so now it kind of does that down there. Now, as it gets down here, it's not going to be so much up and down. This one still is right here. We'll do that. But then over here, it's going to be more of the vertical. I mean, of the horizontal. So let's add some more of this color over here. Start with a little bit of the green. And always remember that photographs will lie to you. A photograph is a very limited thing if you think about it. The human eye sees much more color than a photograph will. And if you don't want your paintings to look like photographs, then you have to rely on your understanding of color in the human eye and what more color it would see. So I often don't show the photographs when I post my paintings online because I'm always changing them. And people don't understand that I'm doing that on purpose, even if I tell them. So this is an opportunity for you to see me doing that exact thing of changing the photograph to feel more pleasant to the viewer. Okay. Now starts the graying it down and the horizontal strokes. There'll still be some vertical strokes, but let me start first with some horizontal ones. Let's start with a peach, which is, a peach is a light orange, so it's basically a grayed down orange. In this case, I've grayed it down. I want to get rid of some of this yellow a little bit. Now here's a good example. If I'm getting rid of the yellow, why did I put the yellow on in the first place? Well, if I didn't put the yellow on, it wouldn't support the peach. Okay, and we need to do up here. So I've got a simplified version of this. I have what, 1, 2, 3, 4 colors, kind of leading from light to dark. But the ridges themselves, there's actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 maybe. So I'm going to suggest that by doing this. Okay, do you see that just made huge distance? Now, this color looks very similar to this color, but it's not. It really isn't. It's a lot cooler. But if I had kept it the same temperature, what would have happened was this would be flipping this way and feeling like it's in front of this. The cooler you make it, the more it pushes back. And I'm also scumbling this. Scumbling is a term that's used when you're not pressing too hard on your brush and you're letting the paint show little ridges of the undercolor underneath it. It's a nice trick to know. I love to scumble. I use it a lot. There. Okay, now let's talk about this water a little bit. I think it needs a little more depth in it. So let's take a little bit of bluish lavender that's neutralized down. Throw a little bit in here. Yes, I do use my fingers a lot. People say, oh, don't use your fingers. I've been doing it for so long, I don't know if I could stop. That one got out of hand. That one got away from me. Hold on. Okay, now the light on the water. Do we make it very light pink? I think so. Let's try it. Let's see what that does. Just thinking of the time that Jack and I were in the harbor on a Boston whaler and we were fishing. And the sideways light streamed down the harbor. It was so beautiful, but the most amazing thing about it was all the light parts of the water were this incredible fuchsia. And all the dark parts of the water was incredible purple. It was amazing. All the years I've lived here, I'd never seen that before. Now I see it all the time because I look for it, but I had never seen that before. That was the day I got a bluefish on the end of my line. We were at the mouth of the harbor, and I don't know how to swim. It's like, I can't believe after all these years living on the ocean, I don't know how to swim, but I don't. And fortunately, I had a life jacket on. Felt stupid in it, but I had a life jacket on. And we're just sitting there, and this was before we had cell phones and things like that. And we're just talking, and we had a couple of drop lines in, even though we're at the mouth of the harbor. I don't know how low the drop lines went, but we had a couple of drop lines in and a couple of, I had an ugly stick. I don't know if you're familiar with that kind of fishing rod. Well, we're sitting there talking, and right in mid-sentence, something gets on my reel, and it lifts me right to the end of the boat, like across the boat. I went completely across the boat and hit the pointing part of the boat. I don't know much about boats, sorry. And Jack grabbed me before I went in. And I'm hanging on to this ugly stick like you would not believe. I was not going to let that thing go. And I'm screaming at the top of my lungs because I can tell this thing's like too big for me to pull in. So he starts helping me, and he's trying to pull it in. And if we had caught it on his rod, we probably could have, because he had a heavier rod. But we get this thing right to the edge of the boat, and it scared the living daylights out of us. This thing was huge. And Jack screams, "Oh my God, it's a bluefish!" like that. And I went, "What?" And the minute we said that, it snapped my ugly stick right in half and took half my rod with it. The one that got away. So I'm going to throw in some darks in here just to give it a little bit of life. I'm used to holding these in my lap when I have to do this part because of my shaky hands, so you have to bear with me here. It's one reason why I have long nails. I'm not a long nail person, but I have to have them along with painting so that I don't, so I can steady my hands. It's kind of like a built-in maul stick. Lightly pull that off. Okay, now let's change this guy. That guy is driving me crazy. First, I'm going to take some sky color. I'm going to take the bigger brush. This is a number 4. Some people call it filbert. Some call it cat's paw. Some call it cat's tongue. But what it is it's curved, you know, so it's not a flat brush on the top, and it's not round. It's got the flat metal part. I like those because if I need to make a straight line, I just use a round, you know. I don't know if this color will work, but oh, I know what we did. We added Provence in that. Too dark. I try to mix my colors all ahead of time so that all my experimenting is done before I go on to do this. Just going to tone that purpley a little bit. Now remember, the sky always does get a little bit lighter as it comes down. It's a little tougher when it's kind of overcast and sun going down. So this looks like maybe there was a little bit of a storm or something that has cleared away. So I'm just going to give a suggestion of some clouds. And like I've said before, we want to control the viewer's eye. So here we go. I want you to look right in the middle here. All right, and the last thing we're going to do is throw on some lighter lights on the clouds. In some areas. Now you know why my fingers always have pain on them. I have to admit, my doctors think it's hysterical. I'm like, really? I did wash my hands. And there we go. And it's finished. shoot me a text of the one that you've done to 781-631-6030, and I will post it if you want. If you don't want and just want me to see it, that's fine too. But I like to put some things up of what people have been doing. So stay safe, stay in, and paint. Bye.